Hi guys, it's Danny from the ScrapFX design team for June 2021. Today I'm doing an art journal page in my ScrapFX junk journal. So this is a new release rice paper, it's called Loopy script, and I'm just tearing that up into random little pieces, little sections, and I'm auditing them on my pages, working out where I want to place them. And I'm using a little bit of matte medium here to glue those down. So a bit of glue down on the page and then directly over the top of the rice paper gives you a nice bond to the page. And these pages have been pre-gessoed prior to videoing. So I'm just making sure that I've got an even coverage over all 4 pages there. And I've also decided to use a tag here. I think I'm going to need an extension because there's 5 ladies, I think, on my focal piece that I'm going to use. So I think I may need this extension through my book. So I'm just prepping a tag as well, just in case I do use that. So back to the art journal, I'm just making sure that that's nice and dry, the matte medium's dry before I place my paint down. And I've selected a few colours here, some nice bright ones, sort of close to the primary colours. I've sort of got blues and yellows, and instead of red I've got an orange there, so very similar colour tones to the primary, and I'm just slapping that down into little sections across my pages, just sort of randomly getting splotches on there, not thinking too hard about how I'm placing that paint down. But you will notice that I'm drying in between colours, and that's because some of these paints are translucent, some of them are opaque, and I want them to sit nicely together, but obviously I don't want too much blending. And because I have got that orange in the mix with all the blues and the greens, that's going to turn to mud, so I'm just making sure that I'm drying in between my layers. And I'm sort of brushing those colours down now, and I am doing a little bit of mark making with that orange, so sort of making my stripes or my paintbrush marks a little bit more obvious, more sort of on the mark making sort of side. Just going back over and making that turquoise stand out a little bit more. So this is another new stamp set. This is a Zinnia stamp set. And I've used a paintbrush to layer the paint on, but it's not a really great technique. I do grab my brayer, and that gives me even coverage with the paint onto the stamp. Much easier to apply it this way. And I'm just stamping that randomly over my journal pages. Again, this is 9 dots, and using the brayer again to apply the paint and randomly stamp over my journal pages. Now I'm using some archival, and this stamp set is round and round. So once everything's nice and dry, I've grabbed a few of my Posca pens here, and I'm using Posca colours that are similar to my background. So I've sort of grabbed a handful of orange and some yellow, some blues, some teal tones. And I'm basically just going over all the shapes and the stamped areas and doodling over the top and mark making and creating sort of pretty patterns over the top. So this is the final stages of my background. You can see how busy and chaotic that is. And that's what I was kind of looking for, is this really crazy bright background. So I was pretty happy with that. So back to the art journal here. I'm using ScrapFX stencil. This is circles. And I'm actually using the positive templates here from the stencil as a mask. I'm masking out the circles, sort of placing them down and sponging around the circle stencils. Now this is called a reduction technique. It's where I'm actually concentrating on certain areas. So the circles that aren't getting the paint on are really popping off the page now, and I'm actually dulling out the background, so it's not as chaotic, and it gives me sort of a place for my eye to rest now with this reduction technique. the navy blue that I'm using really pops with all those blues and greens in the background. And of course there's a contrast with the orange as well. So I really like how the underneath background is still showing through slightly on that navy blue. But those circles are really now standing out, and it's just a really lovely and fun technique to try out. I will definitely try this again in the future. So just slightly going over with my paintbrush. I don't want to cover it all up completely, but I'm just making sure that I've got good coverage in that navy blue areas. Look how great those circles are standing out now. I really love this technique. So I'm now using this is Girl Fashion Rice papers, and I'm just giving the back side of the rice paper 2 coats of gesso. This is so that my girls will be not so translucent, and they'll actually be great focal points in the foreground of my art journal page now. So I'm just quickly snipping those out. I'm not really fussy cutting around them at the moment. Just trying to work out which ladies I'm going to use on my page. So I'm just taking the excess rice papers off, and I'm going to audition them on the page here. And don't they look great just in that white tone? I wish I'd left them white actually. This is where I decide that I am definitely going to use that tag, because I just need that extra length on the page. Even the shortest lady there was just a tad too long. And of course the 3 ladies would have been great just by themselves. It would have given me a bit more of that background showing. So sometimes a little less is more, but obviously with reflection it looks better. So here I'm going to just work out where I'm placing that tag. I've actually marked down where I'm placing it. I'm just using some double-sided tape here. This is a nice strong tape, just so I can stick that tag down directly on the page, because it's just a very light book paper that's in the journal here. Just using a bit of extra glue just to make sure the tag doesn't pop off. And now I'm going to extend those circle stencils again out onto the tag, so it looks like a complete page again. So just sponging around those masks of the circle stencil. Doesn't that blue look just beautiful on the contrast of the teals and the blues there? And especially that orange, it's really popping. So again, I'm using a Posca pen, and I'm just circling, doodling around those large circles just to give it a bit of visual interest. And now I'm going to fussy cut those ladies out properly. And again, they look really good as white pieces on that background. They really didn't need to be coloured. They could have stuck them down directly and we would have had a really lovely art journal page without any colour. But of course, I had to go and colour them, and they still turned out really well, but they were really nice contrast. Now that I'm looking back at this video and seeing the white popping on the background, they look great. So just auditioning the ladies, trying to work out where I'm going to place them all, if I'm going to use them all or if I'm going to use only a few. Of course, I end up using all of them. So I'm using gel medium here to glue them down, a bit of glue down on the base of the background and then straight over the top of the rice paper as well. And I'm just shortening this lady because she was just hanging over too much, so I've cut a little bit of her legs off. Just give her a little shorter leg, and that works well. So I'm just using some Jane Davenport watercolours here, and I'm going to start colouring my ladies in. So I'm just placing some flesh tones in. And now I'm just sort of painting in the clothes. Which I really wasn't loving. I was kind of, this is where I sort of thought, no, maybe I should have left them white. But I've already started now, so there's no turning back. So I'm just popping down the colours, still using similar colours to what I've got in the background. They've got a real 80s feel about them, haven't they? Now I've just got a little quote I've popped in here. It's actually a Lady Gaga quote. And now I'm just trying to change the world. So just back in there and finishing off the last few details of the clothing. Popping some bright colour tones in there. And I still wasn't really loving it. I've added a little bit of pencil, bit of cheek and lip lines in here. And have a bit of a brainwave and decide that I'll go back over with white paint and soften those colours right down to sort of pastel-y tones. Give them a bit of a wash over, and that actually works for me. I'm quite happy with the way it turned out. Sort of just dulled the clothing down a little bit and sort of was a little contrast to the background, which was so bright. And now I'm going over with my black Posca pen and fine liner pens, and I'm just making some sort of scratchy lines in their clothing again, just sort of following the lines that are there and extending those lines, so making them a little bit more scratchy or sketchy looking. And that sort of bonds them to the page and makes them look more like they're drawn on instead of just collaged over the top. So I'm just sort of lightly covering or tracing back over the lines that are originally there on the rice paper, but I'm just making them a little bit more scratchier than what they were the first time round. And I think this sort of messy lines have really kind of bonded those girls on the page, and I'm really happy with the way they look once it's all detailed. So it ended up being kind of a happy accident with the bright colours and then painting over with the white. And this is the rest of the quote, which was one sequin at a time. And again, that was a quote by Lady Gaga. Just thought it was quite appropriate for fashion ladies. So I'm just handwriting that quote in, and I'm just going back over again, thickening up my lines just so that it really pops off the background. And of course, just adding a little bit of bling. Since the word sequin was in the quote, I found some sequins in my stash. And I'm just randomly gluing those ones on. So after I put the first few on, I realised that it was easier to pop a bit of glue on the page and stick the sequin into the glue. So that worked much better. So just randomly popping them on. And of course it all works because they're little round bling spots as well. So kind of goes with the shapes that are happening in the background. And of course the page wouldn't be finished without a little bit of white paint splatter. And then I'm just adding some fine black lines on the shadows of the quote as well, just so that it really pops off that dark background. And that's it. So another page done for June. I hope you found some inspiration in that and have a go at the beautiful products from ScrapFX. And please, if you haven't already done so, like the page and leave me a comment. I would really love to hear your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.